Oh my, excuse me. And a good morning, no, good afternoon to you guys. Here is your chatting magpie, a little bit later than usual on a Monday afternoon, but here for sure. I am so happy to see you all and excited because we're nearing the end of Persuasion. And it's been a tame book. It hasn't been like so dramatic, like compared to Jane Eyre, probably not the same roller coaster turns, but it's still been pretty interesting. The characters, I hope you have found them enjoyable, the story as well. I've had a blast reading it with you guys. So yeah, we are three chapters more before we end the book. And here's my dilemma, you guys. I wanted to finish it quickly, but I think I may have to do 2 read-alongs more. I was thinking probably we can finish it today, read the last 3 chapters, but I don't think it's gonna happen that way, unfortunately. So I'm gonna just read probably either one chapter. Yeah, I think I'll just read 1 chapter, maybe a little over 1 chapter today, because it's a good length. And then on Wednesday, we'll finish Persuasion. And on Friday, we'll have a Persuasion watch party. Oh, will I have time? Probably then. If we don't have the watch party on Friday, we'll have it on Wednesday. That way we can start on A World Away, the fanfic, on the fic cast. Maybe next week? We'll see. Anyway, but we'll talk more about that later. Let me just say hello to the peeps that are in the chat. So first off, saying hello to Early Gang. First comment award goes to Akihana. Says, am I first or did someone else's message get deleted again? No, darling, I believe you may have been first. I did not schedule the live until earlier this morning for me. I think I scheduled it just before I woke up. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't schedule it, but I had so much to do. I had an appointment to keep, so then I wasn't able to schedule it until when I got back. And then I was like, okay, instead of doing the read along at 10 my time, let's do it at noon. That way I can finish doing some work here. So this might be lunchtime for Pacific Coast people. So happy to see you guys wherever you are. Always a joy to have you. But yes, you were the first one. Though Noodle Something Kimchi did reply like almost as soon as I posted the announcement on X, formerly known as Twitter, that they got the notification. So I hope, Noodles, are you here? If you are, make yourself known. Make yourself heard. So hello to Akihana. Oh, by the way, Akihana says, my thoughts for the previous session is, Mrs. Smith, Mr. Elliot is the best catch out there, my dear Anne. But I don't want to marry Mr. Elliot, Mrs. Smith. What a complete 180 from Mrs. Smith. Exactly. So, I mean, I get where she's coming from. She knows that during that time, it was imperative that a woman marry. So if she found someone that was halfway decent, you could overlook many of the worst aspects, I suppose. Nowadays, of course, we don't have to like rush into marriage and stuff like that. But she was like, well, since she's gonna marry him, it's pretty certain I'm just going to hide what I know from my best friend in hopes that her influence will kind of straighten out Mr. Elliot's evil side, which of course is stupid. If anybody gets married hoping that marriage or love will change the other partner, then you're in for a very great disappointment. Marriage or relationships, they don't. Oh, and babies. Don't tell me about like I'm gonna hold on to his love by having a baby with him. No, doesn't happen, you guys. Let's be real. Though, yeah, so it's our world and their world was different. Harriet had her own reasons for not telling Anne the truth, but once she did ascertain that Anne was definitely not going to marry Mr. Elliot. She spilled that tea, and boy, did she ever spill that tea. There was so much information, you guys. TLDR, for those of you who weren't here, he was poor. He was a he was a gold digger. No. A gold digger. Can gold digger be applied to men as well? I think so. Why should they be hunters, fortune hunters, and women be called gold diggers? Now, I think the word fortune hunter is sexist because they give women gold diggers. No, Mr. Elliot is a freaking gold digger. Was a freaking gold digger. He then led his friend to financial ruin. When his friend died, he could have helped Harriet, his friend's wife, because she was in a bad state, but he absolutely ignored her pleas to help. There's also other stuff about Elliot, but that's the gist of it. He's not a good person. He's selfish, calculating, and he can please anybody, ingratiate himself if he knows that he's gonna gain from it. So that's basically a TLDR from last read along. A Little Butterfly says, down to the last few chapters, it's amazing how much can change story-wise throughout a good book. Exactly. We get a change of scenery, we get different characters, we get revelations at just the right time. Jane Austen was in her element, you guys. This is, again, her final book. So she already had Pride and Prejudice, she had Sense and Sensibility, she had Emma, she had Mansfield Park. She had all these books under her belt. She was a very good writer. Teal says, I'm ready for Anne and Wentworth's ship to finally set sail. Me too, girl. If only Wentworth would just get over himself a little. That would be very appreciated. But I hope it doesn't fall on the girl to do all the work. It will be called the HMS Persuasion, and we'll christen it with Mr. Elliot's best bottle of wine because he doesn't deserve to have it. Amen. I agree with that. Yes to that plan. Time Lord Boy, hey, happy to see you. Says, hey folks, hello, happy to see you here. Little Butterfly. By the way, is it too late for you? Well, it's evening for you, so happy to see Early Gang represented here. Putting shade on Mr. Elliot there. Sorry, let me just... Alright, so yeah, that's Persuasion in a nutshell. It's a lot of people. It's a very character-driven story. Probably there may not be a lot of action, but it's very interesting. And I hope you have enjoyed it as I have. Let's continue reading. Chapter 22 is next. So yeah, welcome to all of you live peeps and all of you who will be watching this on replay. It's a pleasure to have you, and let's continue our read along. Sip of water. By the way, I put chia seeds in my water and it is very, very different. It's like I have to chew the water now. So probably this wasn't a good idea. How old are Elliot and Anne in the story? I'm not sure. I should look it up, but I'll do it after we finish this chapter. That's a good question. Remind me though to look it up, because I know Anne right now is 27. Wentworth is about 30, 31. I don't know about Elliot though, but he might be around Elizabeth's age. Elizabeth being around 29. So yeah, we'll have to look it up. Let's do this. Anne went home to think over all that she had heard. In one point, her feelings were relieved by this knowledge of Mr. Elliot. There was no longer anything of tenderness due to him. He stood, as opposed to Captain Wentworth, in all his own unwelcome obtrusiveness, and the evil of his attentions last night. the irremediable mischief he might have done, was considered with sensations unqualified, unperplexed. Pity for him was all over, but this was the only point of relief. In every other respect, in looking round her or penetrating forward, she saw more to distrust and to apprehend. She was concerned for the disappointment and pain Lady Russell would be feeling, for the mortifications which must be hanging over her father and sister, and all the distress of foreseeing many evils without knowing how to avert any of them. She was most thankful for her own knowledge of him. She had never considered herself as entitled to reward for not slighting an old friend like Mrs. Smith, but here was a reward indeed springing from it. Mrs. Smith had been able to tell her what no one else could have done. Could the knowledge have been extended through her family? But this was a vain idea. She must talk to Lady Russell, tell her, consult with her, and having done her best, wait the event with as much composure as possible. And after all, her greatest want of composure would be in the quarter of the mind which could not be open to Lady Russell, in the flow of anxieties and fears which must be all to herself. She found on reaching home that she had, as she intended, escaped seeing Mr. Elliot. He had called and paid them a long morning visit, but hardly had she congratulated herself and felt safe when she heard that he was coming again in the evening. "I had not the smallest intention of asking him," said Elizabeth with affected carelessness, "but he gave so many hints, so Mrs. Clay says it at least." "Indeed, I do say it. I never saw anybody in my life spell harder for an invitation. Poor man, I was really in pain for him, for your hardened sister, Miss Anne, seems bent on cruelty." "Oh," cried Elizabeth, "I have been rather too much used to the game to be soon overcome by a gentleman's hints. However, when I found how excessively he was regretting that he should miss my father this morning, I gave way immediately, for I would never really omit an opportunity of bringing him and Sir Walter together. They appeared to so much advantage in company with each other, each behaving so pleasantly, Mr. Elliot looking up with so much respect." "Quite delightful!" cried Mrs. Clay, not daring, however, to turn her eye toward Anne. "Exactly like father and son. Dear Miss Elliot, may I not say father and son?" "Oh, I'll lay no embargo on anybody's words, if you will have such ideas. But upon my word, I am scarcely sensible of his attentions being beyond those of other men." "My dear Miss Elliot!" exclaimed Mrs. Clay, lifting up her hands and eyes, and sinking all the rest of her astonishment in a convenient silence. "Well, my dear Penelope, you need not be so alarmed about him. I did invite him, you know. I sent him away with smiles. When I found he was really going to his friends at Thornbury Park for the whole day tomorrow, I had compassion on him." Anne admired the good acting of the friend, in being able to show such pleasure as she did in the expectation and in the actual arrival of the very person whose presence must really be interfering with her prime object. It was impossible but that Mrs. Clay must hate the sight of Mr. Elliot, and yet she could assume a most obliging, placid look, and appear quite satisfied with the curtailed license of devoting herself only half as much to Sir Walter as she would have done otherwise. To Anne herself, it was most distressing to see Mr. Elliot enter the room, and quite painful to have him approach and speak to her. She had been used before to feel that he could not be always quite sincere, but now she saw insincerity in everything. His attentive deference to her father, contrasted with his former language, was odious, and when she thought of his cruel conduct toward Mrs. Smith, she could hardly bear the sight of his present smiles and mildness, or the sound of his artificial good sentiments. She meant to avoid any such alteration of manners as might provoke a remonstrance on his side. It was a great object with her to escape all inquiry or eclat, but it was her intention to be as decidedly cool to him as might be compatible with the relationship, and to retrace, as quietly as she could, The few steps of unnecessary intimacy she had been gradually led along. She was accordingly more guarded and more cool than she had been the night before. He wanted to animate her curiosity again as to how and where he could have heard her formerly praised, wanted very much to be gratified by more solicitation. But the charm was broken. He found that the heat and animation of a public room was necessary to kindle his modest cousin's vanity. He found at least that it was not to be done now by any of those attempts which he could hazard amongst the too commanding claims of the others. He little surmised that it was a subject acting now exactly against his interest, bringing immediately to her thoughts all those parts of his conduct which were the least excusable. She had some satisfaction in finding that he was really going out of Bath the next morning, going early, and that he would be gone the greater part of 2 days. He was invited again to Camden Place the very evening of his return, but from Thursday to Saturday evening his absence was certain. It was bad enough that a Mrs. Clay should always be before her, but that a deeper hypocrite should be added to their party seemed the destruction of everything like peace and comfort. It was so humiliating to reflect on the constant deception practiced on her father and Elizabeth, to consider the various sources of mortification preparing for them. Mrs. Clay's selfishness was not so complicated nor so revolting as his, and Anne would have compounded for the marriage at once with all its evils, to be clear of Mr. Elliot's subtleties in endeavoring to prevent it. On Friday morning she meant to go very early to Lady Russell and accomplish the necessary communication. And she would have gone directly after breakfast, but that Mrs. Clay was also going out on some obliging purpose of saving her sister trouble, which determined her to wait till she might be safe from such a companion. She saw Mrs. Clay fairly off, therefore she began to talk of spending the morning in River Street. "Very well," said Elizabeth. "I have nothing to send but my love. Oh, you may as well take back that tiresome book she would lend me, and pretend I have read it, and pretend I have read it through. I really cannot be plaguing myself forever with all the new poems and states of the nation that come out. Lady Russell quite bores one with her new publications. You need not tell her so, but I thought her dress hideous the other night. I used to think she had some taste in dress, but I was ashamed of her at the concert. Something so formal and orangé in her hair, and she sits so upright. My best love, of course." "And mine," added Sir Walter. "Kindest regards. And you may say that I mean to call upon her soon. Make a simple message, but I shall only leave my card. Morning visits are never fair by women at the time of life, who make themselves up so little. If she would only wear rouge, she would not be afraid of being seen. But last time I called, I observed the blinds were let down immediately." Oh my gosh, her father. Man, Sir Walter. It's like, yeah, tell her I'm gonna go visit her, but not to worry, I'll just leave my card. Like she won't even have to come down at that hour in the morning when the morning light will show her to like the most disadvantaged. Oh my gosh, there's an earthquake here in Southern California. Oh my gosh. Yep, things are shaking. It's not too bad so far. Hold on. Woo, we're riding the earthquake, you guys. It's still shaking. I've lived too long in California to really freak out during an earthquake. But in the back of my mind, there's always the thought that it could be the big one. It's still shaking. Yes, east. I'll look up later on how strong that was. And oh, there we go. I got a text from somebody. Did you feel it? Yep, I felt it. Well, I'll answer later. All right. Anyway, continuing on. So where was I? So yeah, Sir Walter Elliot is a very, very interesting man. He never changes. He's so superficial. And his daughter Elizabeth, the same way. She doesn't want to read. She doesn't want to improve her mind. She is as vain as her father. It's a wonder that Anne did not end up like them. All right, continuing. While her father spoke, there was a knock at the door. Who could it be? Anne remembered the preconcerted visits at all hours of Mr. Elliot would have expected him, but for his known engagement 7 miles off. After the usual period of suspense, the usual sounds of approach were heard, and Mr. and Mrs. Charles Musgrove were ushered into the room. Surprise was the strongest emotion raised by their appearance, but Anne was really glad to see them, and the others were not so sorry but that they could put on a decent air of welcome. And as soon as it became clear that these, their nearest relations, were not arrived with any views of accommodation in that house, Sir Walter and Elizabeth were able to rise in cordiality and do the honors of it very well. They don't want to give them too warm a welcome because otherwise they will want to stay with them. Oh, geez, these people, man. Juliana Morelli says, I only experienced one earthquake and it was enough. Where was it? How old were you? Were you a child? I do remember I grew up in earthquake country. I've always lived in earthquake country. What the heck? Mexico City, we had earthquakes all the time. And then, yeah, so I've always been living in earthquake country. And so, but I do remember as a kid, we did drills. And then one time, when I was in preschool, that was the first earthquake I remember. They had us all line up outside, or I think we were all lining up outside, and then I saw like the basketball thing just kind of like going like shaking back and forth. The hoop thing, the pole upon which the basketball thing was, and it was pretty interesting. Yeah. So let me know details about your first earthquake. How strong was it? Mm-hmm. But yeah, earthquakes are scary, you guys. They are scary if you're not used to them. Tamlord Boy says, bet Jane Austen never predicted her work would be read during an earthquake. Wow. Yeah, I don't think there's many earthquakes over in England. Is there, Tamlord Boy? Do you experience many earthquakes? Juliana says the earthquake was in Italy last year. Ooh. Okay. Yeah, Italy also has like volcanoes and stuff, so I'm guessing it makes sense. Little Butterfly says, and Mary has arrived. Indeed, Mary has arrived. We love Mary. Mary, quite contrary. And Teal says, there was a 6.3 when I was in middle school. Ooh, those are scary. Once you get into the sixes, it's scary. You immediately get under your desk. There's no question. You have to get under your desk. Even a strong 5. I remember there was a strong 5. I was at work, and I work I work in a church, okay? And the church is like stained glass, like all the way down the sides of this church. And then like it's an A-frame structure of wood. It's beautiful church. It's wood and stained glass. It was a 5 point something struck, and the place just started creaking like crazy. And I was like, oh dang, where's the chair? No, I couldn't. Yeah, and people were like panicking a bit. There was a clamor. So, all right, continuing on. Okay, they were come to Bath for a few days with Mrs. Musgrove, and were at the White Hart. So much was pretty soon understood, but till Sir Walter and Elizabeth were walking Mary into the other drawing-room, and regaling themselves with her admiration, Anne could not draw upon Charles's brain for a regular history of their coming, or an explanation of some smiling hints of particular business, which had been ostentatiously dropped by Mary, as well as some apparent confusion as to whom their party consisted of. She then found that it consisted of Mrs. Musgrove, Henrietta, and Captain Harville, besides their 2 selves. He gave her a very plain, intelligible account of the whole, a narration in which she saw a great deal of most characteristic proceeding. The scheme had received its first impulse by Captain Harville's wanting to come to Bath on business. He had begun to talk of it a week ago, and by way of doing something, as shooting was over, Charles had proposed coming with him. Mrs. Harville had seemed to like the idea of it very much, as an advantage to her husband. But Mary could not bear to be left, and had made herself so unhappy about it that for a day or two everything seemed to be in suspense, or at an end. But then it had been taken up by his father and mother. His mother had some old friends in Bath whom she wanted to see. It was thought a good opportunity for Henrietta to come and buy wedding clothes for herself and her sister, and in short, it ended being his mother's party, that everything might be comfortable and easy to Captain Harville, that he and Mary were included in it by way of general convenience. They had arrived late the night before. Mrs. Harville, her children, and Captain Benwick remained with Mr. Musgrove and Louisa at Uppercross. Water break. Anne's only surprise was that affairs should be in forwardness enough for Henrietta's weddings to be talked of. She had imagined such difficulties of fortune to exist there as must prevent the marriage from being near at hand. But she learned from Charles that, very recently, since Mary's last letter to herself, Charles Hayter had been applied to by a friend to hold a living for a youth who could not possibly claim it under many years, and that, on the strength of this present income, with almost a certainty of something more permanent long before the term in question, the two families had consented to the young people's wishes, and that their marriage was likely to take place in a few months, quite as soon as Louisa's. And a very good living it was. Oh wait, this is Charles. And a very good living it was, Charles added. Only 25 miles from Uppercross, and in a very fine country, fine part of Dorsetshire. I don't know how you say that, Tamlord boy. How do you say Dorsetshire? What syllables am I not supposed to say? Dorsetshire. How about Dorsetshire? Dorsetshire. And the centre of some of the best preserves in the kingdom, surrounded by 3 great proprietors, each more careful and jealous than the other, and to two of the 3 at least, Charles Hayter might get a special recommendation. Not that he will value it as he ought, he observed. Charles is too cool about sporting. That's the worst of him. Oh my goodness, Charles! I'm not Charles Hayter. Charles marries Charles. He, again, like these people, they have money. They have absolutely nothing to do. The only thing that he is into is hunting. That's it. That's all he does. That's all he cares for. I'm extremely glad indeed, cried Anne. Particularly glad that this should happen, and that of 2 sisters, both deserve equally well, and who have always been such good friends, the pleasant prospects of one should not be dimming those of the other, that they should be so equal in their prosperity and comfort. I hope your father and mother are quite happy with regard to both. Oh, yes. My father would be as well pleased if the gentleman were richer, but he has no other fault to find. Money, you know, coming down with money. 2 daughters at once. It cannot be a very agreeable operation, and it straightens him as to many things. However, I do not mean to say they have not a right to it. It is very fit they should have daughters as shares, and I am sure he has always been a very kind, liberal father to me. Mary does not about half like Henrietta's match. She never did, you know, but she does not do him justice, nor think enough about Winthrop. I cannot make her attend to the value of the property. It is a very fair match as times go, and I have liked Charles Hayter all my life, and I shall not leave off now. Such excellent parents as Mr. and Mrs. Musgrove, exclaimed Anne, should be happy in their children's marriage. They do everything to confer happiness, I'm sure. What a blessing to young people to be in such hands! But your father and mother seem so totally free from all those ambitious feelings which have led to so much misconduct and misery, both in young and old. I hope you think Louisa perfectly recovered now? He answered her rather hesitatingly. Yes, I believe I do. Very much recovered, but she's altered. There's no running or jumping about, no laughing or dancing. It is quite different. If one happens to shut the door a little hard, she starts and wiggles like a young dab chick in the water. And Bennick sits at her elbow, reading verses or whispering to her all day long. Oh my gosh, are you kidding? Sorry. Wow, what a change. Is Louisa okay? Did her brain really get scrambled so much? Anne could not help laughing. That cannot be much to your taste, I know, but I do believe him to be an excellent young man. To be sure he is. Nobody doubts it. And I hope you do not think I'm so illiberal as to want every man to have the same objects and pleasures as myself. I have a great value for Bennick, and when one can but get him to talk, he has plenty to say. His reading has done him no harm, for he has fought as well as read. He's a brave fellow. I got more acquainted with him last Monday than I ever did before. We had a famous set to at rat hunting. They went rat hunting. Bond with your future brother-in-law by going out hunting for rats. We go from weasels to rats. Okay, you know what? As long as you leave the poor weasels alone, go hunt for the rats, okay? We had a famous set to at rat hunting all the morning in my father's great barns, and he played his part so well that I have liked him the better ever since. Here they were interrupted by the absolute necessity of Charles's following the orders to admire the mirrors and china. But Anne had heard enough to understand the present state of Uppercross and rejoice. And rejoice in its happiness. And though she sighed as she rejoiced, where was I? And though she sighed as she rejoiced, her sigh had none of the ill wills of envy in it. She would certainly have risen to their blessings if she could, but she did not want to lessen theirs. The visit passed off altogether in high good humor. Mary was in excellent spirits, enjoying the gaiety and the change, and so well satisfied with the journey and her mother-in-law's carriage with 4 horses, and with her own complete independence of Camden Place, that she was exactly in a temper to admire everything as she ought, and enter most readily into all the superiorities of the house as they were detailed to her. She had no demands on her father or sister, and her consequence was just enough increased by their handsome drawing-rooms. Elizabeth was, for a short time, suffering a good deal. She felt that Mrs. Musgrove and all her party ought to be asked to dine with them, but she could not bear to have the difference of style, the reduction of servants, which a dinner must betray, witnessed by those who had been always so inferior to the Elliots of Kellynch. There was a struggle between propriety and vanity, but vanity got the better, and then Elizabeth was happy again. These were her internal persuasions. Old-fashioned notions, country hospitality. We do not profess to give dinners. Few people in Bath do. Lady Alicia never does. Did not even ask her own sister's family that they were here a month. And I dare say it would be very inconvenient to Mrs. Musgrove. Put her quite out of her way. I'm sure she would rather not come. She cannot feel easy with us. I will ask them all for an evening. That will be much better. That will be a novelty and a treat. They have not seen 2 such drawing-rooms before. They will be delighted to come tomorrow evening. It shall be a regular party, small, but most elegant. And this satisfied Elizabeth. And when the invitation was given to the 2 present, and promised for the absent, Mary was completely satisfied. She was particularly asked to meet Mr. Elliot, and be introduced to Lady Dalrymple and Miss Carteret, who were fortunately already engaged to come, and she could not have received a more gratifying attention. Miss Elliot was to have the honour of calling on Mrs. Musgrove in the course of the morning, and Anne walked off with Charles and Mary to go and see her and Henrietta directly. Her plan of sitting with Lady Russell must give way for the present. They all 3 called in River Street for a couple of minutes, but Anne convinced herself that a day's delay for the intended communication could be of no consequence, and hastened forward to the White Hart to see again the friends and companions of the last autumn, with an eagerness of goodwill which many associations contributed to form. They found Mrs. Musgrove and her daughter within, and by themselves, and Anne had the kindest welcome from each. Henrietta was exactly in that state of recently improved views, of fresh-formed happiness, which made her full of regard and interest for everybody she had ever liked before at all. And Mrs. Musgrove's real affection had been won by her usefulness when they were in distress. It was a heartiness and a warmth and a sincerity which Anne delighted in the more, from the sad want of such blessings at home. She was entreated to give them as much of her time as possible, invited for every day and all day long, or rather claimed as a part of the family, and in return she naturally fell into all her wonted ways of attention and assistance, and on Charles's leaving them together, was listening to Mrs. Musgrove's history of Louisa, and to Henrietta's of herself, giving opinions on business and recommendations to shops, which intervals of every help which Mary required, from altering her ribbon to setting her accounts, from finding her keys and assorting her trinkets, to trying to convince her that she was not ill-used by anybody, which Mary, well amused as she generally was, in her station at a window overlooking the entrance of the pump-room, could not but have her moments of imagining. A morning of thorough confusion was to be expected. A large party at a hotel ensured a quick changing, unsettled scene. 5 minutes brought a note, the next a parcel, and Anne had not been there half an hour when their dining-room, spacious as it was, seemed more than half filled. A party of steady old friends were seated round Mrs. Musgrove, and Charles came back with Captains Harville and Wentworth. The appearance of the latter could not be more than the surprise of the moment. It was impossible for her to have forgotten to feel the disarrival of their common friends must be soon bringing them together again. Their last meeting had been most important in opening his feelings. She had derived from it a delightful conviction, but she feared, from his looks, that the same unfortunate persuasion, which had hastened him away from the concert-room, still governed. The more I think about it, still governed. He did not seem to want to be near enough for conversation. She tried to be calm, and leave things to take their course, and tried to dwell much on this argument of rational dependence. Surely, if there be constant attachment on each side, our hearts must understand each other ere long. We are not a boy and girl to be captiously irritable, misled by every moment's inadvertence, and wantonly playing with our own happiness. Are you sure? Because he seems to not know that. And yet, a few minutes afterwards, she felt as if their being in company with each other, under the present circumstances, could only be exposing them to inadvertencies and misconstructions of the most mischievous kind. "Anne," cried Mary, still at her window, "there is Mrs. Clay, I'm sure, standing under a colonnade, and a gentleman with her. I saw them turn the corner from Bath Street just now. They seem deep in talk. Who is it? Come and tell me. Good heavens, I recollect. It is Mr. Elliot himself." "No," cried Anne quickly, "it cannot be Mr. Elliot, I assure you. He was to leave Bath at 9 this morning, and does not come back till tomorrow." As she spoke, she felt that Captain Wentworth was looking at her, the consciousness of which vexed and embarrassed her, and made her regret that she had said so much, simple as it was. Mary, resenting that she should be supposed not to know her own cousin, began talking very warmly about the family features, and protesting still more positively that it was Mr. Elliot, calling again upon Anne to come and look herself. But Anne did not mean to stir, and tried to be cool and unconcerned. Her distress returned, however, on perceiving smiles and intelligent glances pass between 2 or 3 of the lady visitors, as if they believed themselves quite in on the secret. It was evident that the report concerning her had spread, and a short pause succeeded, which seemed to ensure that it would now spread further. "Do come, Anne," cried Mary. "Come and look yourself. You'll be too late if you do not make haste. They're parting. They're shaking hands. He's turning away. Not now, Mr. Elliot, indeed. You seem to have forgot all about Lyme. Oh, hold on. No, Mr. Elliot, indeed. You seem to have forgot all about Lyme. To pacify Mary and perhaps screen her own embarrassment, Anne did move quietly to the window. She was just in time to ascertain that it really was Mr. Elliot, which she had never believed before he disappeared on one side, as Mrs. Clay walked quickly off on the other, and checking the surprise which she could not but feel at such an appearance of friendly conference between two persons of totally opposite interest, she calmly said, "Yes, it is Mr. Elliot, certainly. He has changed his hour of going, I suppose. That is all, or I may be mistaken. I might not attend." And walked back to her chair, recomposed, and with the comfortable hope of having acquitted herself well. The visitors took their leave, and Charles, having civilly seen them off, and then made a face at them. Wait, hold on. Again. Okay, hold on. The visitors took their leave, and Charles, having civilly seen them off, and then made a face at them, because those are her mother's friends, I guess. Charles, are you an elementary school boy? Abused them for coming, began with, "Well, mother, I have done something that you will like. I have been to the theater and secured a box for tomorrow night. Ain't I a good boy? I know you love a good play, and there is room for us all. It holds 9. I've engaged Captain Wentworth. Anne will not be sorry to join us, I am sure. We all like a play. Have I not done well, mother?" Mrs. Musgrove was good-humouredly beginning to express her perfect readiness for the play, if Henrietta and the others liked it, when Mary eagerly interrupted her by exclaiming, "Good heavens, Charles! How can you think of such a thing? Take a box for tomorrow night. Have you forgot that we're engaged to Camden Place tomorrow night, and that we're most particularly asked to meet Lady Dalrymple and her daughter and Mr. Elliot and the principal family connections on purpose to be introduced to them? How can you be so forgetful?" "Ah, boo-boo," replied Charles. "What's an evening party? Never worth remembering. Your father might have asked us to dinner, I think, if he had wanted to see us. You may do as you like, but I shall go to the play." "Oh, Charles, I believe it will be too abominable if you do, when you promised to go." "No, I did not promise. I only smirked and bowed and said the word happy. There was no promise." "But you must go, Charles. It would be unpardonable to fail. We were asked on purpose to be introduced. There was always such a great connection between the Dalrymples and ourselves. Nothing ever happened on either side that was not announced immediately. We're quite near relations, you know, and Mr. Elliot, too, whom you ought so particularly to be acquainted with. Every attention is due to Mr. Elliot. Consider my father's heir, the future representative of the family." "Don't talk to me about heirs and representatives," cried Charles. "I am not one of those who neglect the reigning power to bow to the rising sun. If I would not go for the sake of your father, I should think it scandalous to go for the sake of his heir. What is Mr. Elliot to me?" Charles. Those two, Charles and Mary, they're so amusing, but it would suck to, actually be in that kind of marriage. What is that? What is Mr. Elliot to me? The careless expression was life to Anne, who saw that Captain Wentworth was all attention, looking and listening with his whole soul, and that the last words brought his inquiring eyes from Charles to herself. Charles and Mary still talked on in the same style, he half serious and half jesting, maintaining the scheme for the play, and she invariably serious, most warmly opposing to it, and not omitting to make it known that, however determined to go to Camden Place herself, she should not think herself very well used if they went to the play without her. Mrs. Musgrove interposed. "We had better put it off, Charles. You had better much go back and change the box for Tuesday. It would be a pity to be divided, and we should be losing Miss Anne too if there is a party at her father's, and I'm sure neither Henrietta nor I should care at all for the play, if Miss Anne could not be with us." "Ah, that's so sweet." Anne felt truly obliged to her for such kindness, and quite as much so for the opportunity it gave her of decidedly saying, "If it depended only on my inclination, ma'am, the party at home, excepting on Mary's account, would not be the smallest impediment. I have no pleasure in that sort of meeting, and should be too happy to change it for a play, and with you. But it had better not be attempted, perhaps." She had spoken it, but she trembled when it was done, conscious that her words were listened to, and daring not even to try to observe their effect. It was soon generally agreed that Tuesday should be the day, Charles only reserving the advantage of still teasing his wife by persisting that he would go to the play tomorrow if nobody. Charles and Mary. But persisting that he would go to the play tomorrow if nobody else would. Captain Wentworth left his seat and walked to the fireplace, probably for the sake of walking away from it soon afterwards and taking a station, with less barefaced design, by Anne. "You have not been long enough in Bath," said he, "to enjoy the evening parties of the place." "Oh, no. The usual character of them has nothing for me. I am no card player." "You were not formerly, I know. You did not used to like cards, but time makes many changes." "I am not yet so much changed," cried Anne, and stopped, fearing she hardly knew what misconstruction. After waiting a few moments, he said, and as if it were the result of immediate feeling, "It is a period indeed. 8 years and a half is a period." Whether he would have proceeded farther was left to Anne's imagination to ponder over in a calmer hour. For, while still hearing the sounds he had uttered, she was startled to other subjects by Henrietta, eager to make use of the present leisure for getting out and calling on her companions to lose no time, lest somebody else should come in. They were obliged to move. Anne talked of being perfectly ready, and tried to look it, but she felt that could Henrietta have known the regret and reluctance of her heart in quitting that chair and preparing to quit the room, she would have found, in all her own sensations for her cousin, in the very security of his affection, wherewith to pity her. Their preparations, however, were stopped short. Alarming sounds were heard, other visitors approached, and the door was thrown open for Sir Walter and Miss Elliot, whose entrance seemed to give a general chill. And felt, do you know those kind of people that everything is cool, we're all having fun, but the moment one person comes in, it's like it's just their presence is just unwelcome, and it's not. Yeah, I get it. I can feel it in my bones, just imagining how they just douse the general mood of merriment. Anne felt an instant oppression, and wherever she looked she saw symptoms of the same. The comfort, the freedom, the gaiety of the room was over, hushed into cold composure, determined silence, or insipid talk, to meet the heartless elegance of her father and sister. How mortifying to feel that it was so! Her jealous eye was satisfied in one particular. Captain Wentworth was acknowledged again by each, by Elizabeth more graciously than before. She even addressed him once, and looked at him more than once. Elizabeth was, in fact, revolving a great measure. The sequel explained it. After a waste of a few minutes in saying the proper nothings, she began to give the invitation which was to comprise all the remaining dues of the Musgroves. "Tomorrow evening to meet a few friends, no formal party." It was all said very gracefully, and the cards with which she provided herself, the Miss Elliot home, were laid on the table, with a courteous, comprehensive smile to all, and one smile and one card more decidedly for Captain Wentworth. The truth was that Elizabeth had been long enough in Bath to understand the importance of a man of such an air and appearance as his. The past was nothing. The present was that Captain Wentworth would move about well in her drawing-room. The card was pointedly given, and Sir Walter and Elizabeth arose and disappeared. The interruption had been short, though severe. For a second, I don't know. The first time I read this, I thought, oh, Elizabeth is setting her cap on Captain Wentworth. But but I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think? I don't think so now. I believe it reads now more that she's like, I like to have handsome people in my handsome house, and he would be a pretty object to show off, or to like somebody who's nice looking that would complement the elegance of my drawing rooms. Remember, they have 2 drawing rooms that is their pride and joy. The interruption had been short, though severe, and ease and animation returned to most of those they left as the door shut them out. But not to Anne. She could think only of the invitation she had with such astonishment witnessed, and of the manner in which it had been received. A manner of doubtful meaning, of surprise rather than gratification, of polite acknowledgment rather than acceptance. She knew him. She saw disdain in his eye, and could not venture to believe that he had determined to accept such an offering as an atonement for all the insolence of the past. Her spirit sank. He held the card in his hand after they were gone, as if deeply considering it. Only think of Elizabeth's including everybody, whispered Mary very audibly. I do not wonder Captain Wentworth is delighted. You see, he cannot put the card out of his hand. Anne caught his eye, saw his cheeks glow and his mouth form itself into a momentary expression of contempt, and turned away, that she might neither see nor hear more to vex her. The party separated. The gentlemen had their own pursuits. The ladies proceeded on their own business, and they met no more while Anne belonged to them. She was earnestly begged to return and dine and give them all the rest of the day, but her spirits had been so long exerted that at present she felt unequal to move, and fit only for home. She is a proper introvert. I love her. That's me. That's me right there. She felt unequal to more, and fit only for home, where she might be sure to being as silent as she chose. Promising to be with them the whole of the following morning, therefore, she closed the fatigues of the present by a toilsome walk to Camden Place, there to spend the evening chiefly in listening to the busy arrangements of Elizabeth and Mrs. Clay for the morrow's party, the frequent enumeration of the persons invited, and the continually improving detail of all the embellishments which were to make it the most completely elegant of its kind in Bath, while harassing herself in secret with the never-ending question of whether Captain Wentworth should come or not. They were reckoning him as certain, but with her it was a gnawing solicitude never appeased for 5 minutes together. She generally thought he would come, because she generally thought he ought, but it was a case which she could not so shape into any positive act of duty or discretion, as inevitably to defy the suggestions of very opposite feelings. She only roused herself from the broodings of this restless agitation to let Mrs. Clay know that she had been seen with Mr. Elliot 3 hours after his being supposed to be out of Bath. For having watched in vain for some imitation of the interview from the lady herself, she determined to mention it, and it seemed that there was guilt in Mrs. Clay's face as she listened. It was transient, cleared away in an instant, but Anne could imagine she read there the consciousness of having, by some complication of mutual trick, or some overbearing authority of his, been obliged to attend, perhaps for half an hour, to his lectures and restrictions on her designs on Sir Walter. She exclaimed, however, with a very tolerable imitation of nature, "Oh dear, very true! Only think, Miss Elliot, to my great surprise, I met with Mr. Elliot in Bath Street. I was never more astonished. He turned back and walked with me to Pump Yard. He had been prevented setting off for Thornbury, but I really forget by what, for I was in a hurry and could not much attend, and I can only answer for his being determined not to be delayed in his return. He wanted to know how early he might be admitted tomorrow. He was full of tomorrow, and it was very evident that I have been full of it too, ever since I entered the house and learned the extension of your plan and all that had happened, or my seeing him could never have gone so entirely out of my head." End of chapter. Ha! Mrs. Clay was confronted with the truth that she had been seen that morning with Mr. Elliot and saw that there was a flash of, guilt. Yes, Mrs. Clay is very, very sus as well now. And she says that all the preparations for the party just absolutely, like, made her forget that she had seen Mr. Elliot. Are you sure about that, Mrs. Clay? Are you sure about that? So that is the end of the chapter, and I suppose this is the end of the read-along for now. We're going to finish the rest. Let me see, hold on. One day had only passed. Yeah, there's 2 more chapters left. So we're going to finish that on Wednesday. I think I probably am going to... what should we do? I want to have the watch party on soon after Persuasion. That way we can go into... But I can't have a watch party on Friday because Friday is a busy day for me. Unless we postpone... We finish the book today, on Wednesday. We finish the book on Wednesday. We have a break on Friday and we have the watch party on Sunday. What do you guys think? We either have the watch party on Wednesday evening or Sunday evening. Well, Sunday evening my time, of course. Let me put it to the poll. Watch party. Again, the watch party is open to anybody. You don't have to be a member. I give you a special invitation so you can attend. Watch party Wednesday evening or Sunday. Probably late evening. Sunday afternoon. Yeah, Sunday afternoon. Start poll. Alright, you guys let me know. I'm down for whatever. We are going to have a break though. I think we're going to start A World Away on Monday. Or should we have it on Friday? I don't know. Well, we're gonna have a chit chat on Tuesday in the other channel for Hannelore. By the way, we are doing chit chat tomorrow. We are reading the Hannelore spin-off. In case you haven't gotten the notification or the news, if you're not following me on X, formerly known as Twitter, or you're not subscribed to my other YouTube channel where I posted it on the community, we are reading Hannelore this week on the Discord server, and then we're going to discuss it on live on Tuesdays during the same time as we used to do the pre-pub chit chats. I know that Hannelore has not been released, but I was waiting for it until the last possible moment for J Novel Club to make the announcement that it was happening, and J Novel did not say anything, so it's gonna happen. But probably they're gonna do all the fan books first and the short story collections before they do that. I don't know why else they wouldn't just say like, hey, we're doing Hannelore. Well, I don't know. I again, this is just me speaking strictly as a reader and a fan. I don't know anything about the business of publishing. So that's why, because there are a lot of people who still have feelings about the end of the book, who don't want the story to end, who don't want the chit-chats to end, I decided, you know what? Everybody has Google Chrome or can install Google Chrome, and Google Chrome has machine translation that you can apply so you can read it. It's not perfect, but you can read it yourselves or with me on the Discord server, and then we can talk about it if you're interested. All right, so let's see. Let's see. I'm going up. So Tablet Board says there's no earthquakes at all in England. That's good. Lucky you. Juliana Morley says that one city in particular was the Roman Empire beach town. The one where Mount Vesuvius was at, because that's the first thing that I thought about, Vesuvius. And most of the buildings from that time were gone due to the sheer amount of landslides caused by earthquakes. Wow. I think, yeah, I imagine living in a place where you didn't have like proper architecture to like that you knew wouldn't crumble over you in an earthquake. Like literally stones and masonry falling all like on top of you. That was bad. Nowadays, of course, we live in like places where they have earthquake codes and stuff so that the building doesn't fail after a strong one. Here in California, the building code requires that every building that's built has to withstand a 9.1 earthquake, I believe. My civil engineering life I'm forgetting all those details. I think it was 9.1. So that's the standard for new buildings. And then you also have to retrofit them so that they won't fail during an earthquake. But since most of the stuff here is like wooden structures, the biggest danger, you guys, that Southern California, at least here, Southern California has, is fires. Like, people will not die. Well, the casualties will not be so much from the earthquake shaking things and falling things on people, things falling on people, but from a mega fire that will sweep over all of this massive urban sprawl. That's the biggest danger, because you could get like gas leaks and gas fires and electricity failing, and then you have winds, and then things would spark here and the infrastructure collapses, the firefighters are too overwhelmed, fire spreading. Basically, that's the biggest thing that people have to worry about. Earthquakes and fires. But we do have perfect weather, so I mean, it's a trade-off. All right, so Time Lord Boy talks about tornadoes. There might have been a tornado years ago over in England. Wow. Also says, didn't know the aristocracy ever hunted rats. News to me. I also didn't think that they would hunt rats, but I guess Charles is just that type who sees something, he's gonna go after it. He's like an overgrown boy in that regard. I do know that during Victorian era times, in the middle of the city, the gritty parts of town, they would have, they would go to rat fights, and they would bet on the rat or the dog. They would put a rat and they would put a terrier dog, or maybe rats, and then they would like tear apart the rats in front of a cheering crowd. I don't know, it was, times were different. That's the only thing I knew about rats. So that's why there was a profession, a very serious and very important profession of the rat catcher. He didn't just catch a rat for you, but he would then sell the rat for like the games or whatnot. All right, very interesting pastimes, very wholesome pastimes. Noodles Dumplings Kimchi says, sorry to be late, I went down a Fallout hole. Hey, fellow bookworms, happy to see you here. Hope you enjoy the rewatch or the replay. Elizabeth is a terrible person, says Little Butterfly. Yes, she is a terrible person. She's just like her father. Red Tempest has just joined. What did Elizabeth do? Elizabeth does not want to welcome her family for dinner because she is afraid that the Musgroves, who are not aristocracy, they're just generally well off. They will see that in their new house in Bath, they don't have as many servants as they used to. They don't live as extravagantly as they used to. So she's like, I don't want them to see that we are reduced in life. I don't want them to compare themselves and us looking unfavorable after such a comparison. So she decided not to invite her family, the Musgroves, her extended family, the Musgroves, over for dinner, and instead said like they can just come over for an afternoon of cards, which is like basically they only maybe serve like wine, if anything, maybe if you're lucky, at least from all the books I've read. I haven't been an aristocrat in a past life, you guys. Maybe they had like canapes hors d'oeuvres or something, if you're lucky. But it was usually like just very light. And also she was like being very condescending to Captain Wentworth. I don't know, Wentworth, I like Wentworth, but he just seems like a, like, jeez, can you remember that you're gonna live only 20 more years? Come on, life expectancy is 50 years old in this day and age. Come on, Wentworth, you want the girl to do everything for you? Come on, be a man. Why are you sulking about? Anyway. All right, can we continue? Noodles of Kimchi says, can we continue to treat Elizabeth as bad cat and spray her face with water? Yes, indeed. Psst, 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 psst. There you go. Akihana, your meme is in action. Yeah, Red Tempest asking, is Elizabeth wooing him? It seemed like it, right? The first time I read it, I thought she was wooing him, and maybe she was. I don't know. All she knows is that Wentworth would be a welcome addition to her party because he cuts a good presence. He just looks well. He slays. He slays with his suit, and he has a nice figure, and I don't know what. I don't know. Elizabeth is a mind we don't need to comprehend or delve too much into. All right, Juliana says Sunday works for me if the evening is around this time. So Sunday would probably be maybe, well, probably. I could do it like 2 o'clock Pacific. I know a lot of people will be doing Sunday stuff and having fun. So personally, Sundays, I just use them to relax. So I will do my chores quickly. Like I do meal preps on Sundays, and Sundays, Tuesdays, Thursdays are meal prep days for me. Well, meal prep, quote unquote. As much meal prep as I do. I don't do it that much, but what I do it on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Or Sundays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, or Sundays, whatever. Anyway, that doesn't matter. Yeah, I can do it like maybe 2 o'clock Sunday. I have to check who's winning though. Wow, we're at 50-50. Wednesday evening, and Sunday afternoon. Okay, this is what we're gonna do, you guys. I want us to enjoy both adaptations. I don't have Netflix, so we can't watch the 3 adaptations. But let's do this. On Wednesday evening, we're gonna watch the 1995 version. And on Sunday afternoon, we're gonna watch the 2006 version, which is my favorite. Sally Hawkins in the adaptation. Yes, so we're gonna watch both. The first one has Syrian Hines and I forget her name. She has large bright eyes. I call her Bright Eyes Lady. We can watch that one on Wednesday evening, and then Sunday evening we'll watch it. That way, like if people can't make it to one, they can make it to another one. Okay. So Wednesday evening around 4 or 5 Pacific. That way, like Southeast Asia gang can join. And then on like around noon Sunday for Europe gang to join. How's that? Is that enough of a compromise, you guys? Actually, I just want to watch all of them. I just want to watch both of them, and I don't have Netflix, so I cannot stream the other one. The other one, which is the one that was bashed on by all Persuasion fans because it was so off character. But I don't care. I still found it lacking, but you know how you have like hate watches? It's not quite a hate watch, it's like a pity watch. I don't know, I've never really like found the concept of like, I understand the concept of hate watch exists, but is there a concept of like, I feel so sorry for you and yet I'm still gonna enjoy it because like I kind of feel sorry and I'm still gonna watch it. That's me and the Persuasion adaptation. It's not awful, but it's just lacking. Anyway. Okay, so Sunday we're gonna do it on Sunday around noon, Juliana. Red Tempest says Magpie's busy Friday due to partying. I wish. Friday is a day that I have to really be ready for the next day. Saturdays are very important days to me, so I can't. Friday is like Friday to Saturday. Just have to really, really work. Red Tempest says, yeah, Juliana Morelli, are we watching the adaptation drama from ITV? We are watching it. It's going to be on Sunday noon. We'll watch that one. Red Tempest says, I still need to read Hannelore MTL web novel. I'm gonna read that I scheduled the read along. Not read along, just, I don't know if we're gonna read it. I don't know exactly how it's gonna be, but I'm gonna read it. I haven't read Hannelore in about, I don't know, 2 years, a year and a half, so I forget most of the details. So I'm gonna read it again from the very beginning at 4 o'clock on the Discord server. If you are a member of Ko-fi, join me to read it. Let us laugh at the awful MTL machine translation. Time Lord Boy says, is Sally Hawkins in the adaptation? In the Sunday one, the ITV one, yes. Red Tempest, Hannelore novel was just released in Japanese and it takes a bit to get rights to translate, so probably after the fan books and side stories will be translated. Yeah, probably. I figured Hannelore was part and parcel with A Sense of a Bookworm. So we'll see. Prepub continues. It doesn't quite continue as in we change it. We change the what we're talking about. So rather than chit-chatting about Prepub, we're going to be chit-chatting about Hannelore. All right. So Juliana Morelli is clearing up the question about the earthquake area, the earthquake city in Italy. Yeah, I can imagine that they've experienced plenty of earthquakes over there. Tamar Borg says, looked it up and it says there have been earthquakes in the UK. News to me. Are they doing fracking over there? Because I've heard that fracking also contributes to earthquakes sometimes. I don't know enough about the technology to really have an opinion on it, and a lot of people get kind of political about it, so I'm not going to talk about it, but I have heard that that causes it, and I have heard that they're doing that outside of the US, so maybe that's one reason why. Red Tempest says, for Hannelore web novel chapters, yes, Noodles, companies can change. Okay. I thought it was ITV though, Juliana. I'm pretty sure it was an ITV movie. Because when I first watched it, it was they ripped it from the TV. Like the very first time I watched that Persuasion from 2006, I downloaded it from I don't know where, and they had recorded it from TV, and it said like next time on ITV or whatever. During the credits, they were saying like what was coming up next, like, and then the Vicar of Dandlebury or whatever it was they were talking about. So it was on TV, and they said ITV, so I'm positive it's ITV. Little Butterfly points out, so Charles would play Ditter. I do believe Charles would be a Ditter fan. That's a very excellent point. He is absolutely obliterating, massacring all the small woodland creatures he can get his hands on. The weasels, they're dead. The rats, they're dead. All of them extinct because of Charles. But again, I think he actually hunted the rats because they were a plague on his father's barn. So yeah, it makes sense that we need to get rid of those rats. All right. Oh, Patrick says, but I just scheduled a watch party for Sunday. What time is your watch party, Patrick? Because I'm gonna do mine at noon Pacific. Yours are usually like 3, like 6 your time, 3 Pacific. So if we do, thank you for smoking watch. Oh, thank you for smoking watch party. Okay. So since you already scheduled something, and it's likely that we may have overlap, Patrick. We may have overlap, but I doubt it. The ITV version, if I start at noon, we'll be done by 2. How's that? Juliana Morelli says, I haven't watched the Dakota one. I was too aggravated by the trailer. Yes, you should be aggravated. If you were aggravated by the trailer, I don't recommend you watching it. You will hate it. However, I keep my mind open. I was just like, kind of like, you poor thing. It's like seeing something that, you know, it's trying its best. You know, they fully believed in their vision and they were fully committed to whatever they were going for. And unfortunately, their little gamble did not pay off. And so all I can do now is just kind of like do a pity watch party. But I'm not going to do it. Two adaptations is enough. Okay, Patrick, I already took down the poll. Okay. Oh, Juliana Morelli points out about ripped shows. Yes, you know, it was a good era, the late 2000s to the early 2010s. That was a good era for ripped shows because I did watch Persuasion ripped. I watched North and South, which you are mentioning. North and South. I love North and South. You guys, the adaptation is sublime, but I would not read the book again. It was too heavy for me. I could not read the book. The thing about North and South is I watched the movie. I watched the 4-part series. It was sublime. And then you guys, I was like, I'm gonna read the book. It's bound to be sublime. But this one just suffered from comparison. It did not. Usually you read the book and it's better than the movie. In this case, I personally did not like it. Thornton is supposed to be like this massive hottie, like a sultry sultan of smooth. You know? And the book just describes him as like this big hulking brutish fellow, and I'm like, no, he's supposed to be like smoldering. Like, oh my gosh, like, yeah. And I was I took that so personally. I just barely finished the book and I was like, never again. So I don't think we're going to be reading North and South here, unfortunately, but it's a good one. The same with Little Dorrit. I did watch Little Dorrit first and then I read the book. The book wasn't too bad. It's a Dickens book, so it took forever for me to get through it, and I could only read it with, like, I would read a chapter and then read the Sparks notes of that chapter, and then continue reading another chapter and then go back to read the Sparks, just so I could understand what the heck was going on, because Dickens is Dickens. But yeah, those were good shows. Also, along that line, there was also Bleak House that I liked from the Dickens from that era. Bleak House, Our Mutual Friend. You already mentioned Little Dorrit. There's several of those that were really good during that time. Time Lord Boy says, we lost wild boars and beavers for a time because of the pointless hunting, sadly. Aw, that's so sad. You would think that because they have such anti-poaching measures that the owners of the land would have been better stewards, but apparently it was the owners of the land that hunted them to extinction, sadly. Patrick says, I can push it back an hour if need be, but work starts earlier than it used to for me, and I'm trying to get as much sleep as I can. No, it's okay, Patrick. I'll just schedule it for noon. We'll be done before 2. And then I'll try to hop on into that movie as well. Though I've never heard of that movie, but I'll look into it. Let's see. Juliana Morelli says, Richard Armitage was pure perfection on it. Yes, I am so glad somebody agrees with me. Do you like remember, like, just, yeah. Juliana understands me. Juliana Morelli understands me on a deep level. And yes, Juliana also points out something about the book. It's really good, but it does have a lot of agony. Yeah, it's very angsty. And you know I love my angst, but I was more mortified by the romance, by the fact that Thornton was not the suave sultan of smooth that I wanted him to be. The smoldering sensation. He wasn't. All right, we see a lot of hunting talk on the chat. Awesome. I have never gone hunting. I have never shot a firearm. Haven't learned, should probably learn. But just one of those pursuits that I haven't really caught my interest because nobody that I know around me really shoots or has guns. I mean, I live in suburbia. Come on, dude. So yeah. Then I hear. All right. So awesome. Happy to read. Time Lord Boy says, luckily both the beavers and wild boars have been introduced, so they're back again out in the wilds. Huzzah! So you guys, this is the end of our Persuasion session 12 read along. We will finish in the next session. That will be Wednesday. I'm going to schedule it for probably the morning, and then we will have our watch party with the 1995 version on Wednesday evening, like at 5. Yeah, probably 5. And then we're gonna have a break. I don't know. I still don't know. Should we read A World Away on Friday morning? Should we start A World Away? Now I need to do like another poll. No, I have to decide this on myself. I have to put on my my big girl pants on and make a decision. Let me see. Depends. I don't know. You know what? Let's just read A World Away on Friday. Let's start A World Away on Friday. Why the heck not? It's there's 95 chapters waiting for us, so we might as well start it. Why delay it? It's gonna happen anyway. So let's just read A World Away on Friday. So okay, here is the calendar. Wednesday morning, read along, Persuasion. We finished Persuasion. We watched the movie 1995 version with Syrian Hines Wednesday evening. For those of us who can, if not, don't worry. There's a Sunday one. Sunday, noon o'clock Pacific. We'll have a watch party. We'll finish in time. Plenty of time for Patrick also to have the watch party, and we can join him if we want as well. And then, but Friday we will start A World Away. Not sure about the time. Probably it's going to be in the morning, but some things schedule is subject to change without notice. So still be on the lookout. Okay. Awesome. See, I need to have this conversation because I need to plan my schedule. Like, you guys have no idea. I am a struggling freelancer person. One of the joys about being a struggling freelancer person is that there are some weeks that I have a bunch of work to do, and there's some weeks that I have nothing to do. This week is like kind of like a mid okay week, but I have to like set my calendar properly. That's why, since I have a lot to do usually on Fridays, but not to like be overwhelming. So that's why I think it's a good time to start A World Away. So with that schedule in mind, I am looking forward to the rest of the week, you guys. I hope you look forward to the end of Persuasion. It's gonna be a doozy. We need to get Wentworth to... Come on, Wentworth. Come on, Wentworth. Be a man. Who wrote North and South, asks Time Lord Boy. Elizabeth Gaskell, who actually, she was a very good friend of Charlotte Bronte and wrote her biography. So now you know. Also, I think she also wrote another series that was really good called Wives and Daughters, but I don't think it was finished, unfortunately. And that's also a BBC adaptation, which was really enjoyable. I highly recommend it. I have so many of those BBC drama interest. Like, I love those things when I was in high school and college. You have no idea. I am a romantic through and through, and I just ate up all those BBC and ITV adaptations. I love them. All right, everybody, let's do this. This is the end of the read along. I have got to go and get ready for other stuff. But I will see you guys later. For those of you who are on my Discord server and you are interested in reading Hannelore, I'll see you guys at 4, so in a few hours. Take care, everybody, and thank you for joining me. Till Friday. Bye-bye.